All right, so we have Chris Windley, who they mess it up over there and call you Chris Windley, is it right? So we have Chris Windley on the show today. So welcome, Chris. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Brian. Nice to be here. Thank you very much. Hope you're
My
all well
pleasure.
across there.
It's going well here. So we are talking to Chris, who is across the pond. So Chris, give us a little bit of background, please, on how you developed your expertise in social selling and really leveraging marketing through social channels. How did you get that?
So, okay, Brian. So I'm just thinking I think we probably ought to go back to the days when I started working as a salesperson for American companies. Right.
So you started with the good guys.
Yeah. So basically, the first American company that I worked for was a company, I don't know whether you'll have heard of them, Brian, called Memorex Telex.
I remember them. I'm old enough. I got enough gray hair. I remember those folks.
You do? Okay. So obviously Memorex and Telex were two separate American companies that merged together at some point. And basically, I think you'd go back then, Brian, and you'd say they were sort of like the IBM and the Xerox of selling.
Okay.
Do you know, if you know what I mean, right?
Absolutely.
Probably they were more influenced by the Xerox. Is that how you pronounce it? Xerox, or is that?
Yeah, 100%. Yes, Xerox is right.
Yeah, they're more influenced by the Xerox method of selling, but IBM was our main competitor.
Okay.
So we compete. So obviously we had to understand how IBM sold in order to be effective against them. Yeah.
Yes.
So obviously this is, back in the days when IBM was like, king of the block, weren't they, in computer terms and that. Yeah.
Yes.
So very early on, when I'd come out of the Navy, I went into a company that was basically a military company. They didn't really have any strong sales methodology, if you like, right? And then I went into Memorex Telex, and boy, did I get one. Right. Yeah. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire. So I went in as a territory salesperson, and then I worked my way up from territory salesperson to area to regional salesperson, that regional sales manager. That's as far as I got, and then I left to my first startup. Actually,
okay.
I briefly worked for another American company, which was Storage Technology, if you remember them.
Don't remember those ones.
Okay, well, people that listen to this and were in the Storage Tech, they were called. So people that remember this and were in the IBM space, they would know Storage Tech. Right?
Got it. So you really went from Memorex, which was, is it real or is it Memorex, that type of company, right? So went from no sales methodology to leveraging a sales methodology. Really knowing your competition is what really started you to set you up for this. And then you went up to the startup space. So how did that background and then into the startup space take you into this social selling, social marketing, marketing through social channels? How did you come to that?
Yeah. Okay. So obvious. I mean, I always, when I'm talking about like social selling and that, Brian, I always go back to, if you like, the traditional selling, that we were taught, at Memorex and Telex. Yeah. And all of the processes and all the rest of it, if you like, that I use come from then as well, right? But basically, to answer your question, what really happened was, I'm just trying to think of the timing in terms of this, right? So I guess, yeah. So I went into that startup, which was basically in the fiber optic infrastructure space, and I spent about 3 years with them, taking them from they were 1.2 million when I joined. When I started, and they were 60 million when I left. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then, like you say, what happened was I then started, starting up my own companies and that, and I got into, I read something in a magazine, a communications magazine, Brian, and it basically said that 75% of the people that wanted to buy a phone system, which was one of the companies I was involved in then, right, Googled for more information, right, about a phone system and on who to talk to. And I went, 75%? Well, if it's only half that, I better figure out how to get found,
Yeah.
in a Google search. Yeah.
Now, do you remember the year that was?
Yes, I do. I do. I definitely do. So that would be around 2004, 2005.
Okay.
Right. And when I basically started, for the startups that I was working with, which I was also invested in, I basically started trying to work out how to get found in Google, right? And so that's how I started first on SEO. But I started SEO like, difficult to explain this, but like not from an SEO perspective, but more from a what became known as a content marketing perspective,
Okay.
right? Which stood me in really good stead, actually. As Google changed its algorithm through like Panda and Penguin and all of that, right? I think maybe you'll agree with me that actually quality content became more important than sort of black hat SEO techniques, if you like. Well,
Yeah. So let's touch on that really quickly because and you can agree with this or disagree with it. It's my premise that knowledge is ubiquitous. That if you're trying to hold back the information, you're actually going to put yourself in a detrimental situation, because I can go anywhere. I can Google it, YouTube it, go any search engine that you want and find the information. And it's really, how do we take that information, and whether it's through social or whatever the case may be, take that content marketing, that valuable content, and share it to be known as the subject matter expert, right? So
yeah.
I really think that's been the shift that a lot of people still haven't caught up to, is my sense, but I'm curious on your end.
No, that's exactly right. And I won't go off at a tangent as well. But one of the other things that I learned about a bit later on, was establishing a personal brand, if you like, right?
Okay.
And from that brand, building out like a presence, if you like, and that would help you monetize it, right? And I completely agree, with what you said. For me, it was, quite. So I sort of, I'm like always like a quality person. I prefer quality or even luxury, if you like, products and that, right?
Right.
So for me, it was always important to have quality content, which goes to what you're saying. Content that, if you like, that shows that you're an expert in that subject, demonstrates that you're an expert in that subject. Absolutely, Brian. And to me, the fascinating thing was that actually then, of course, what happened was that people who had set up their websites in a sort of a black hat way, they disappeared. Post Panda and Penguin, those websites just disappeared, right? And the content marketers, the quality content marketers came to the fore.
Right. And
If you,
look at HubSpot and what they were able to do from that content marketing. And I think people that jumped onto that really did well. Now, are you saying, because you brought up another key point here, is developing a personal brand? Now, for those listening, Chris was the first person that I reached out to that he had so many connections that you weren't able to add any more connections on. So I realized that LinkedIn shuts you down at 30,000. So you were the first person that I met who had 30,000. So clearly you've developed that personal brand. So how important is developing that personal brand? And is that the key to social marketing or social selling? Or can you go into that a little bit?
It's one of the keys, right? So I got to a situation, and I'm trying to think where it is in terms of years and that, right? I think it was probably not until about 2010 or something like that, right? That I realized, if you like, that something wasn't working quite right, But by then, right, I had been working with HubSpot, as you mentioned, HubSpot.
Right.
We both know I'd been working with HubSpot, for 2 or 3 years as well. I'd helped HubSpot come over here into Europe and the UK. And so, and yeah, all, as you say, all of what HubSpot do is extremely relevant, right? But I was then going, yeah, there's something missing here. And I figured out that, the other thing that I had to do was I had to actually do some work on my brand, right? And and I had, it was a bit of a struggle, in all honesty, because I was doing loads of things, and it took me a while to figure out, like, how to condense that and focus it into something and say, okay, this is who I am, actually, right? It was a lot of painful, actually, like thinking, but then, and there was another company, by the way, I can't remember whether it was back then, that I got, another American company that I got working with. I don't know if you know them, but called Brand Yourself.
I don't know them, no.
Okay, well, they're a really interesting company as well. And Brand Yourself was basically, they were set up, right, because the founder of Brand Yourself, right, he basically was Googling himself, and there was some stuff coming up in Google that he didn't like, he didn't really want presented, right? So he basically started this company so that you could either push down content, right, to page 3 or 4 where nobody would bother to look, right?
Right.
Yeah, or and the way that you did that was by producing more content that ranked higher, right? But anyway, going back to it, eventually I figured this out, and I went, yeah, I've just got to do this. And when I figured out what my brand was, I thought, okay, so now what I've got to do is I've got to go across all my platforms, and I've got to, make sure that my brand is consistent across
Interesting.
all.
So you came full circle then. So you came out of this from a sales methodology, starting from a sales perspective, but then you started transitioning into marketing and branding, all couched into giving out valuable content. So you really came full circle, and you were ahead of the game. I mean, hopefully you'll take this as a compliment that it is, but you were really kind of like the grandfather of social selling and social marketing. I mean, if we're talking Memorex on a tape and bring it all full circle to HubSpot coming into the UK, I mean, that's pretty darn impressive.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to note, right? When I sort of decided, I decided that I would get ranked for 2 things.
Okay.
Me personally, right? I would get ranked for Chris Windley, and I would also get ranked, and you can do it, for top digital sales expert, right?
Right.
And I went for top digital sales expert because Brian, we are salespeople, right?
Right.
We, I am not. I always say to people, I am not a marketing person. I am a salesperson. I am. I am only. This is a bit, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk. Well, he in his usual colorful language, he basically says, "I'm only here for the business."
Right.
Yeah. I'm only on social media. He probably says F in business, right? I'm only, but he's basically only on social media for business. And that's me. I'm only on social media to get leads.
Well, so let's talk through that. I mean, so one of the questions I have here is, what's your motivation? What gets you out of bed? Why do this?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I'm like naturally driven, sort of naturally a bit competitive. I don't consider myself to be hugely competitive, actually, but it's more that I like to see things done the right way. I'm always interested. I'm curious about things and about people and all the rest of it. So sort of what makes me get out of bed is just going and doing a good job. You know, in reality, I just like to go do a good job of something. And a good job of something for us is, are we bringing in leads, and are we converting them leads to customers and paying clients, isn't it? That's a
Absolutely.
good job for us, isn't it?
Yeah, because our premise is this: is entrepreneurship is one of the greatest organizations or greatest entities known to humankind, because if you are a good entrepreneur selling a good product and hiring good people, you can do so much good with it. Look at a Bill Gates, how much he's giving back to the community because he did really well in entrepreneurship, and that's what we're all about here. So I love it. Now, so tell me a little bit about your life's motto. So we know what makes you tick is doing things well. Give us a sense of your life principles. What makes you tick? What grounds you?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I don't know. These are hard questions actually for me to answer, and that, you know, the well, like, I suppose, I am like ambitious. I think differently about things. I think I drive change. At the minute, I think we're talking about going back to work, if you like, and I understand that, but also I'm saying no, we shouldn't be going back to work.
Yeah.
This is like the greatest opportunity ever, for us to not go back to work anymore. So there are things like that, but I just honestly, I just get excited every day about bringing in leads for people and converting those leads and seeing people's delight when that happens, and of course also their disbelief, right? I was saying for somebody, this was interesting, Brian, actually, I've just had a conversation with him earlier today. A lad called, a young lad to me, he contacted me, and he works for, I won't say which, but he works for the most amazing UK company at the minute.
Okay.
That's gone in like no time flat from 20 million turnover to 500 million global turnover. They are absolutely incredible. And but he had always got his leads, and this is a young guy, always got his leads the traditional way, right?
Okay.
Basically, pick up the phone, right? Meet people on the train, go to this meeting or that meeting. That's how he got his leads. Suddenly, all of that's cut off,
Right.
right? Yeah, so fair enough to him, right? He reaches out and he basically goes, Chris, I'm just really going to try this. He said, because I've not done it before. But of course, he did it in the right way. And the right way, which was basically, can you help me?
Yeah.
A bit, and so I did, and I basically, and he said, well, what is it that you do, right? And I have this analogy that I use at the minute. I don't know how well it works and that, but I say, well, look, I've got like I think you've seen this. I've got like a 4-cylinder engine, right? That I like to make sure it's running really nicely, right? And my 4 cylinders are inbound marketing or inbound sales, if you like, outbound sales,
Right.
networking online, and networking offline, right? Now, all of that presupposes, just going back to this, all of that presupposes that I have my brand and my presence in place,
Got it.
right? Yeah. But so now, obviously, we can't do face-to-face networking. So one of my cylinders is gone, right? But fortunately, as you kindly say, I'm an expert in the other 3.
There
Right?
you go.
So, yeah. So it doesn't matter. It does it, you know.
So just like investing, you need to diversify your marketing approach.
Yeah, well, definitely. And obviously, again, you know, just going back to that and saying, you know, to me, it's a sales approach. You know, yes, it is. You know, where's the line between marketing and sales? The line for me is that I only do marketing to get sales,
Got
right?
it.
And I don't know what you think about this, Brian, and I'm curious, you know. You see, to me, I think some marketers don't understand what the objective is.
Yeah. So one thing that we always say is marketing is for generating leads. Although branding is important, and we're talking about branding here. Branding is absolutely important, and impressions are vital, and you need those. But you can't pay the bills. You can't pay payroll. You can't invest in your company with brand impressions. And so my belief is marketing is all about supporting sales and that alignment thereof. And it's not which one's better or worse or which one should take the lead. There's absolutely a sales and marketing alignment. So that's my premise.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's fair enough, you know. But you know, like I say, I sort of like to be a little bit cruel, if you like, and just and just say, you know, listen, guys, you know, you're a great marketer, but you don't understand what the objective is. You know?
Right, closing business. Well, so
Yeah.
as we wind things up here, Chris, I guess you've been around, you've had some experiences. My guess is you probably ran into a problem or two. What's one lesson learned that you'd like to impart on everybody of you know, hey, avoid this, don't make this mistake that I've
Yeah. Wow. Well, there are well, there are so many. You know. I mean, I really did find it. You know, the hardest job in some ways. You know, I'll admit to people, if you like, that, you know, building my first and my biggest company sort of was easy. You know,
done.
I mean, like Voyager Networks and internet, right, at its time, you know, in the late 90s and that, you know, we just absolutely flew, and everything, you know, came together. You know, and then we sold out to Estee Lauder's son, Ronald, American company. And you know, and obviously we all got a lot of money and that, you know, it was the hardest thing to repeat that, right? The hardest thing. And, you know, I spent so much money on things that just didn't work, you know, that you sort of thought would work. And particularly they would work if you threw a lot of money at them, right? But they didn't work, you know. And in the end, there were, you know, there have been I'm glad to say, a few successes, but there were a lot of failures there, you know, with things that actually, if I'd really thought about it hard, were never going to work.
Interesting. So
Right.
really, if I could sum that up, is to know the systems and process of what's working and what isn't, so you can repeat and scale.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right, you know, that some of the I had to get back to, and that is, you know, that is exactly part of the journey. I had to get back to, so I reached back to, you know, to Memorex Telex basic systems, if you like, and said, okay, let's produce a digital version of that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And even now, when I talk about it, and obviously people don't. Well, I was going to say people don't go back to that, but unfortunately, people are still taught sort of in the old way, aren't they?
Yes.
So actually, I was going to say it's not relevant for me to tell them about what happened 20 or 30 years ago, but actually it is, because unfortunately some of them are still being taught that way.
A
So
lot of people have not changed. You're 100% correct. So any best practice that you want to impart on everybody of if you're looking at building your personal brand, if you're looking at driving leads from social marketing, social media, what's one hack that you can give everybody to do?
well, it may not be the primary aim of this, but just to go back to that, what I call brand presence monetization process,
Okay.
right? So without going into a long story here, right, what actually happened was that there was a period where I was working with, you'd be, if you like, they were sort of like, wannabe celebrities, right? And they were people that were very high up in network marketing companies and stuff like that, right? And basically, one of them said to me, Chris, I don't understand. Why is it, and this was in a network marketing company actually, why is it that those two women there, right, are absolutely flying and all the rest of my team isn't? And I said, well, actually, if you look at them, right, Natalie, if you look at them, right, there's basically two things about those two people that they've really got going on, right? One is they have very strong personal brands,
Okay.
right? Two is they use social media to massive effect, right? Whereas, if you may know this as well, Brian, a lot of network marketers are still teaching their downlines, as they call them, right, to do network marketing in the old way, right? And they don't use social media, but some of them do. And so when you put those two things together, when you put a brand together with great social media outreach, you just get amazing results. One of these women, I can tell you, right, she was on Tenerife, I think it was, on the island of Tenerife, right? She had no physical access to anybody, but she was one of their leading recruiters. And the reason that she was one of their leading recruiters was because she just had an amazing brand, and she just like really knew how to use not all social media platforms, but certain platforms. So that we actually then took that brand presence monetization process and we taught it to all of the senior managers of their downlines, right? So
So
it's a process that was proven.
yeah, and it goes back again to that proven process. You just tweak and adapt it. You figure out what works and repeat it. Love it. Well, so as we wrap up here, any resources that you might recommend? Where should people go to find out how can I best build my personal presence, or how can I do, like you said, build my brand, have a presence, and monetize it? What suggestions would you have?
Well, I not that I use them massively now, right? But I always point people to HubSpot,
Okay.
right? Because I go like, you just go and sign up to HubSpot and see what happens. you know.
And they do have a lot of resources there between blogs and videos and everything else. So that's a great resource. Well,
Yeah.
so Chris, who should reach out to you? How should they do it? And why would they want to connect with you?
Okay, so we haven't really talked about it, have we, Brian? But at the minute, I'm predominantly in the cybersecurity space,
Okay.
right? So that's the main thing that I'm doing. If you look at my LinkedIn, you'll find me on there, obviously Chris Windley. Um, and so in the cybersecurity space with Lujam Cyber, and we're also building what are called business and cyber resilience centers across the UK. Will be coming to your part of the world soon. And so basically, for Lujam Cyber, I mainly talk to people that are like managed service providers,
Okay.
or telcos, or ISPs, or sometimes cybersecurity specialists. So those are the people that I really want to talk to there. I think the business and cyber security resilience centres in the UK, that's a bit more complicated because there are different types of people that we want to connect with, mainly in the UK at the minute. So the Lujam Cyber one is easy to do. We've just, I'm pleased to say, won a major contract in the Far East. So later on this week, Brian, we're actually training the sales teams that are based in Singapore.
Okay.
On Lujam Cyber, if you like, on our go-to-market strategies. And of course, what's happened really, and obviously this is where you've got to keep your antenna up, is that the Far East is coming out of the pandemic.
Right.
Right. Now we were going to go in there anyway, but now the guys have pushed the button. They've said we're opening up. Now is the time to really push the message out there. So that's why we're doing the training this week.
So very interesting. Well, Chris, I can't thank you enough. It's been fun jamming with you from Lujam, and appreciate it very, very much. And we'll get this out to the team, and I'll mark up some marketing notes for everyone. But some key takeaways here is really marketing is about sales driving leads. You have to know your competition, use a sales methodology, a marketing methodology, and sales and process and systems work that we need to really condense our focus, really be curious and authentic in everything that we push out and bring value.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, Chris. Great content, great time here. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you folks soon.